When you play video games, you're only able to play as one character. But what if that character changed throughout the game? So in this video, I'm going to be making a game where you play as multiple characters. I am doing this for the 2023.1 Brackey's Game Jam. This should have been easy, since I had 7 days to make the game. But I was busy making my last video, that now I only have 2 days to make the game.
Hooray!
Now lucky for me, the theme we ended up with, "An End is a New Beginning," was one of the themes I voted for, so I already know what I'm going to make. I would have you control one character trying to kill enemies, and when you die, you take control of a new character with different stats and abilities. And since I have little time, the characters will be shapes and the enemies will be scribbles. The first thing I made was a circle, and after some scripting, it was now able to move with the arrow keys. I would later change it to work with WASD, but I don't know when, so just pretend it was always like that. I then made a red circle, ooh spoopy, and made it always move towards the player. This here would be the enemy. Now everything was working fine, but the enemy just goes inside the player, which doesn't make much sense. So I added some stuff and made them collide with each other, but the enemy would just push the player, and I didn't want that. The thing is, I don't know how to fix it, and I spent way longer than I wanted to trying to find the answer until I realized all I needed to do was change just one drop down value. Anyways, the last thing I did today was make the art for the characters. I took inspiration from my other game, Ball with a Gun, for most of the characters. I made a circle, triangle, square, hexagon, and one new shape, an octagon. This was all I was able to do today, and right now I am feeling pretty confident with finishing this game on time. The first thing I did on Friday was make the sprites for the enemies. Since I'm making them scribbles, all I did was... and I was done with the sprite. I made a total of 9 different sprites for the enemies. You'll see why later. And if you're wondering why these scribbles have a circular shape, well, I don't know. So now it's time to use these sprites. I gave the player the circle sprite and gave the enemy the scribble sprite. And to make the enemies more lifelike, I used the other sprites to make an animation for the scribbles. Now we have enemies, but no way to kill them. So I need a gun. I took the gun and bullet sprites from Ball with a Gun and added them to the game because I didn't want to make one again. I coded up the logic for the gun to make it look at the mouse, which worked. First try. I said it worked. First try. I then made the bullets shoot out of the gun. And to finish up the shooting, I gave the enemies a health amount that would decrease when hit by a bullet, and when their health reached 0, they would die. I didn't want the game to take place in the void, so I needed to make some art for the environment. To stick with the geometry theme, I made the background, graph paper, and the border of the map a pencil box. I added the sprites to the game, and made the map and the border. When I tested the game out, the player was just able to pass through the border, and the only way to fix it was to have the enemies be able to push the player. I made a system that would spawn the enemies in a random place in the map. The thing is, I don't like how they just appeared. So I made an animation that would slowly make them visible so that the spawning looks more natural. To make the characters more unique, I made a stats class that would hold things like movement speed and health. This made each character feel like their own person in some way. To finish up Friday, I need to deal with the gun from earlier. To make it better fit the theme, I made the gun a pencil and the projectile an eraser ball, I guess. Because you have to erase the scribbles. Ha! Get it? It is now the last day I have to work on this game before I have to submit it, so I better work fast. I made the enemies damage the player every few seconds when they are touching you. Now I need to add the main feature of the game, the switching between characters. I made a UI menu that would pop up when the character dies. This UI would change depending on who died. I added some logic that would have the scene reload when the character dies. Everything was working well until... yeah, it doesn't work. And the more I tried to fix it, the more errors I got. I was working for so long that I was tiring myself out. So I just stopped working and went to the gym to cool down. I came back a few hours later with an open mind and ready to work. After only a few minutes, I thought of a solution. Instead of reloading the scene when the player died, all the enemies would be killed and a new character would be spawned in. I still had some issues with the enemies, but I soon got that fixed and we were back on track. When playing the game, I noticed that the color of the UI didn't change when each character died, which I wanted. When I googled the problem, I learned that the UI used color while I used color 32. To keep this short, the main difference between color and color 32 is that color takes RGB values from 0 to 1, like 0.5, 0.75, and 0.2, while color 32 uses numbers from 0 to 255, like 32, 255, 170. When I fixed that, the UI worked as expected. It is now part of the game dev process where I must add post-processing to my game. I don't know half of these things, so I'm just gonna randomly add things and hopefully I get something good. So, yep, yeah, sure, this option, and I ended up with this. I then made a menu for when the last character died, prompting you to either start over or go back to the main menu that I'll eventually add. To make each character even more unique, I'm going to give each one of them their own special ability that they can use in game. I first made the Circle's ability. It was the simplest of all of them. It would just shoot a bunch of projectiles in a circle. I then realized that I needed to give these abilities a cooldown because... is it something I want in the game? I then made the other 4 abilities. The triangle can dash through enemies, killing everything it touches. The square spawns 4 copies of itself, like it's in an anime, that help it kill enemies. The hexagon explodes, killing all enemies in a radius. You can't see the explosion yet, so just pretend it's there. And finally, the octagon slows down time for a bit, letting you shoot way more balls at the enemies. I then made a main menu for the game, and named the game Polygon Squad. Very creative, I know. I made a score that would increase every time you killed an enemy. I made UI for the score, ability cooldown and timer, and health. It is now really late and I still have a lot of stuff to do, and I'm getting tired. I might have to stop and accept defeat. But mama ain't raised no quitter, so I kept working. I first added particles for when the hexagon exploded. I first tried doing this on my own, but then I gave up and just took the ones from LowBudgetGameDev. I then tried to make the enemies slowly disappear as they took damage, but that didn't work, so I just gave up and moved on. To make sure the game doesn't lag, I added a max enemy count which would make the enemies stop spawning when it got above a certain number. Now you see how I increased the enemy amount here. I didn't add any way for this number to decrease, but that shouldn't affect anything, right? To finish up with the enemies, I made them spawn faster and with more health every time you kill an enemy. The game is almost finished, but it doesn't sound like anything. So I need to add some sound effects and music. I tried using the same ones from LowBudgetGameDev, but it doesn't sound right. So I opted to look through my assets to find something that sounds better, and I ended up with this. The last thing I put together was a pause menu so you could pause the game. It is now time to submit the game to the jam. So I got the itch page ready, but when I started to build the game, everything was going fine until something strange happened. My computer's fans suddenly got loud. I didn't record it, but here's about what it sounded like. I got scared when I heard it, so I closed down everything and stopped the building process and waited for it to cool down. I then successfully built the game with no other issues and submitted the game to the jam a little after midnight. I'm going to bed. Okay, so it's been a few days. Let's see what people think of my game. Okay, so, cool game. Thanks. Fun game. I stopped because the scribbles stopped spawning in. Wait, what? Oh! I forgot to make the enemy amount decrease. I might have to fix that later on. But anyway, what did my game get in the jam? 425th place? Woo! No, but in all seriousness, out of over 700 total entries for this jam, 425th isn't bad at all. I might have to come back to this game to fix any major bugs in it. But until then, go watch this other video.